What the? 4.0 Solutions released a video chat between Walker, Zach, Henry, and Mark about open source and industrial automation earlier this week. And it was a really interesting video. I think you should go give it a watch. But I also just wanted to give a few thoughts. No criticism, just an expansion of some of the things that were talked about in the video. Firstly, Walker mentioned that one of the reasons that software proprietors might close their source is because what they built was too easy, which is a funny thought. I'm not sure how true it is, but it is true that a lot of the things we build in industrial automation, or a lot of the solutions we have, are simpler than they seem. For instance, a PLC is simply a piece of software that runs arbitrary code in a loop, whether it's on a microcontroller or on an industrial PC or whatever. A PID is just a single equation that runs in a loop, even though that function block can seem kind of intimidating. An HMI really does the same thing as a web browser with different technology and code underneath. It's not hard to replicate a lot of the things we do in industrial automation, and I only want to bring that up for people who might be intimidated about building things on their own. Next, I just wanted to suggest to the community that we keep an open mind, particularly around the infiltration of mainstream and web technology and open source into the industrial space. The reality is that large content providers for the internet have better solutions for a lot of the same problems that we have in industrial automation, with a much broader audience of users and developers. Good examples are high availability and workload orchestration with Kubernetes, user interface design with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, server-client architecture with web browsers. Some will say that the criticality of the plant floor is different than websites, and it certainly, with human safety systems, should be separate from this conversation. But with operational logic, millions of dollars are at stake in the event of an outage of a server in both industries, so they're kind of similar. Also, I wanted to suggest to expand your vocabulary. Something I realized when I started developing solutions using mainstream technology instead of industrial software is that open source solutions might not use the same terminology, and they might not be one-to-one with the solutions that you're used to from industrial automation. For instance, an HMI may be called a web interface, a PLC might be called a service, HTTP and MQTT might be used to solve your problem just as well as Ethernet IP or Profinet. If you hear a term that you don't know when you're searching for a solution, I would suggest go ahead and Google it or ask ChatGPT about it. Expand your knowledge, it might solve your solution the same way. The next thing is open source is layered. Open source solutions don't tend to be monolithic in contrast to the proprietary solutions we're used to in industrial automation. They build on top of each other. If an existing open source solution has solved the problem adequately, others will use that and build on top of it. And actually, even many proprietary solutions do this on top of open source, like Ignition, but that's a topic for another time. For instance, for Project Kraken AnywhereSCADA, we aren't trying to solve the problem of workload orchestration and high availability. We use Kubernetes and Docker because they've done a tremendous job at providing solutions for that. We are not trying to solve version control because Git and other version control solutions have already done that. We haven't really talked about user interfaces in a video for Project Kraken and AnywhereSCADA, but we aren't trying to recreate that either because they're already solved by a lot of different packages out there, including React, Vue.js, Svelte, Solid.js. So I'm just pointing out how open source seems to do this better than the way the current proprietary systems do it, by recreating all of the features inside their own platform, and it's usually tending not to be as good as what would be developed by open source. The funding portion of that video was an interesting discussion. The funding topic is an interesting one. Our initial strategy with Project Kraken and AnywhereSCADA is to bootstrap it by charging for AnywhereSCADA as a service, and then through building custom solutions using it as a backbone for clients, we'll feed most of that development back into the open source Project Kraken packages. But it would be seriously excellent if a funding model through sponsorship by end users and integrators was possible, similarly to how many web technologies and front-end frameworks are funded. I'm excited if that's a possibility in the future. Anyway, thanks to Zach, Walker, Mark, and Henry for a captivating discussion. Also, thanks for mentioning us in that video. We'll keep building.